The forest was ablaze with shadows and rain, the storm howling like a pack of wolves in mourning. Lightning split the sky, briefly illuminating the clearing where flames licked at the pyre. A body, wrapped in blood-stained cloth, lay motionless at its heart. The Alpha stood apart from the crowd, his broad shoulders rigid, his jaw clenched so hard it seemed carved from stone. His silver eyes glowed through the storm, fixed on the fire as if it might offer him some truth. But it offered none, only smoke and the sickening scent of burning flesh. His chest heaved once, though no words left his lips. To speak would mean admitting the unbearable, that the woman fated to be his, the one he had rejected, was gone forever. Around him the pack shifted uneasily, some murmured prayers, others averted their eyes, none dared approach him, not when his aura burned with grief and rage so fierce the very air trembled. Hidden in the shadows beyond the clearing, a pair of eyes glistened with tears. She watched as her own death was mourned, the flames reflecting in her wet lashes. The pyre was not her tomb, it was her freedom. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her chest, feeling the frantic hammer of her heart. Alive, buried in the world's eyes, but alive, she whispered into the storm, her voice trembling, "Forgive me." Every fiber of her being screamed to run to him, to throw herself into his arms, to confess the cruel illusion. But his rejection still rang in her soul, sharp as a blade. "I will never claim you." Those words had shattered her, driven her to this desperate trick. Better to let him believe she was dead than endure another moment of humiliation at his side. The storm grew fiercer, carrying away the scent of her tears as she turned from the flames. Each step into the darkness was a severing of who she had been. The Alpha's roar broke the night then, raw and violent, echoing through the trees. The sound nearly made her fall to her knees. She bit her lip until it bled, forcing herself onward. Behind her, the fire raged. Ahead, only shadows waited. She vanished into them, leaving behind her name, her pack, and the mate who would one day discover she had never truly died. The night of her rejection was etched into her soul like a wound that would never heal. Moonlight spilled across the gathering hall, silver washing over the polished wood floors where the pack had assembled. The ceremony should have been sacred, a moment when fated mates found each other under the goddess's blessing. Instead, it became her undoing. She stood in the center, trembling but proud, her heart swelling with foolish hope. She had dreamt of this moment since she was a child, that the bond would ignite, that her Alpha would finally see her not as a burden, not as a fragile shadow of her family, but as his equal. And for a fleeting instant, she thought she saw it in his eyes' recognition, longing, the spark of fate. But then his expression hardened. The silence in the hall was suffocating as he stepped closer, towering over her. His voice was low, but each word struck like a whip. "No." Her breath caught. "What? I will not claim you," he said, louder now, for the pack to hear. His silver eyes flashed cold, cutting her deeper than any blade. "I reject you as my mate." The crowd gasped, ripples of shock spreading like cracks in ice. Whispers hissed through the room, shame, pity, disbelief. Her throat burned as if she had swallowed fire. She wanted to scream, to demand why fate would be so cruel. Instead, only a broken whisper escaped. You can't mean this," but he did. She saw it in the ruthless set of his jaw, in the way he forced himself not to touch her. His hands clenched at his sides as though holding himself back from reaching for her. Yet his rejection was absolute. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall before the pack. She forced herself to stand tall, even as her heart splintered. Why, the question screamed inside her, but her lips stayed sealed. He leaned closer, voice a low growl meant for her alone. "You will destroy me if I keep you." Then he turned his back. The sound of his footsteps echoed like a death knell. The bond inside her shrieked, pulling, tearing, begging for him. But the Alpha had chosen rejection, and fate's cruel gift had become a curse. Her nails bit into her palms until blood welled. If the goddess herself demanded this bond, then she would defy even the goddess. She would not be humiliated again. By the time the hall emptied, her decision was made. If he would not claim her, then the world would never see her broken. She would vanish, better a ghost than a discarded mate. The scent of blood clung to her as she slipped away into the night, her heart already plotting the impossible, her own death. The forest swallowed her whole as she fled the packlands, her heart hammering in time with the drum of her footsteps. Branches tore at her skin, but she welcomed the sting. It grounded her in the choice she had made. By dawn, she reached the river that marked the border. There, waiting in the mist, was the only soul who had agreed to help her, Elara, a healer too wise and too kind for the brutal politics of the pack. "You're certain?" Elara's voice trembled as she unrolled a bundle of herbs, vials, and cloth. "Once this is done, there's no return. I'd rather be dead in their eyes," she whispered, "than live under his rejection." The healer's gaze softened, but she did not argue. Instead, she crushed powders, smeared tinctures, staining the girl's skin with death's illusion. Her pulse was slowed by bitter drafts, her lips painted gray. To any eye, even a wolf's, she would look lifeless. The plan was simple, cruel in its elegance. Her body would be found bloodied near the river, carried back for the pyre. No one would question a rogue's ambush. The Alpha would watch her burn, and her name would be erased in ash, but the bond fought her even as the concoctions dulled her senses. Her wolf clawed within, furious at this betrayal of instinct. "We are not meant to hide. We are not meant to run." She pressed a hand to her chest, silencing the ache. If you had felt his words, she whispered to her wolf, you would know this is mercy. Hours later, wrapped in a shroud of bloodied cloth, she lay motionless on the bank while Elara wept silently beside her. The hunters arrived as planned, shocked faces bending over her, curses flung at the rogues who had done this. Her Alpha came last. Through half-lidded eyes, she caught a glimpse of him, his jaw locked in fury, his eyes blazing with a torment he tried to hide. He carried her himself, cradling her as if she were fragile crystal, though his words of rejection still rang in her heart. When he placed her on the pyre, her world ended, and began anew. That night, Elara smuggled her away before dawn's light revealed the trick. By the time the fire consumed the empty shroud, she was already gone, following hidden trails into the human towns that pulsed beyond the forests. There, with a forged name and borrowed face, she would become no one, a ghost wearing flesh, but the bond would not die. Each night, in dreams, she still felt his touch, his fury, his hunger, his loss. Even oceans of distance could not sever what the goddess had bound, and though the world now believed her dead, her heart whispered a truth more dangerous than death itself. The Alpha would never stop feeling her. Years passed, but the memory of fire never left her. By day, she lived as someone else. In the human town miles from the pack's border, she kept her head down, blending into the mundane rhythm of market streets and lantern-lit alleys. To them she was just Mara, a quiet seamstress with clever hands and sorrow in her eyes. But at night, when the moon rose high and silver washed over the rooftops, the illusion cracked. The wolf within her prowled restlessly, pacing the cage of her ribs. And in her dreams, always, his face returned. She would wake gasping, her throat raw as though she had screamed his name, her sheets damp with sweat, her heart thundering as if she'd been running through the forest again. The bond, invisible but unbroken, curled around her soul like barbed wire. Some nights she swore she felt him, a shadow brushing against her, a phantom touch at the edges of her mind. Stop it. She whispered into the darkness, clutching her chest. Stop finding me. Yet she knew he wasn't truly finding her. Not yet. The pull was instinct, two halves of one whole clawing to reunite. Still, whispers began to reach even this town. Merchants spoke of an Alpha who prowled the borderlands, restless and merciless, always searching. Some said he hunted rogues. Others claimed he was haunted, a man cursed to seek a ghost he had lost to fire. Each time she overheard his name, her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her work. He can't know. He must never know, but fear not at her resolve. If the bond had kept her tethered despite oceans of silence, then perhaps it kept him tethered too, and if he was truly searching. One evening, as she locked the shutters tight against the rising moon, she caught a scent on the wind. Faint, wild, unmistakable, her knees buckled, his scent. It was gone in an instant, whisked away by the night breeze, leaving only the pounding of her heart. She pressed trembling hands to her face, choking on a sob. He was closer than she had dared to imagine, and if he found her, she didn't know whether she would run or finally break. The alpha of Blackthorn Pack had never known peace since the night she died. Every full moon, his rage tore through the woods, a storm no hunter dared follow. He had buried her with his own hands, scattered her ashes across the riverbank, and yet, the bond had not severed. It gnawed at him, a hollow ache that refused to heal. Each time the moonlight touched his skin, he swore he felt her heartbeat echo in his chest. Every breath tasted of absence, of a mate he had cast away. He told himself it was guilt, that his mind conjured ghosts to punish him for the rejection that had driven her into death's arms. But wolves did not imagine bonds. Bonds were truth. One night, as he prowled the border, a sharp wind carried a scent he thought lost forever. Faint, fragile her, his chest constricted. For a moment he could not move, could not breathe. Then the beast within him surged, snapping against its cage. She lives. The thought was poison, sweet and damning. He followed the scent until the trail vanished among human villages, leaving him trembling on a lonely hill. His wolves whispered uneasily at his side, exchanging wary glances. They knew better than to speak the word delusion aloud. Back at the pack house, silence haunted the alpha's halls. He lingered by her old chamber door, still untouched, as though she might walk through it again. His hands curled against the wood, his jaw tight. "Why won't you let me go?" he muttered into the emptiness, but the emptiness never answered. The elders urged him to claim another mate, to strengthen the pack with a Luna. But each woman he looked upon felt wrong, foreign. His wolf snarled at the very suggestion, the bond branding him with chains no one else could see. That night, as storm clouds rolled across the sky, he poured himself into the hunt. His claws tore through rogues at the border, his fury unrestrained. Blood spattered the earth, and still it was not enough. Only when he lifted his head did he feel it again, that flicker of her aura, soft as a heartbeat. Not a ghost, not a dream, a warning, she's out there. He growled to the wind. His wolves hesitated behind him, exchanging uncertain looks. The alpha's silver eyes glowed, wild and unyielding. "If fate thinks it can take her from me twice," he swore, "then fate will learn the price of crossing me." The market square bustled with human laughter, the scent of bread and roasted meat thick in the air. She kept her hood low as she bartered for thread, her hand steady though her heart never was. Living among humans meant pretending to be ordinary, invisible, safe, but safety shattered in a single heartbeat. She felt it before she saw him, the air tightening, the world holding its breath. Her wolf screamed inside her chest, clawing with desperate recognition. And then he was there, the alpha. He stood at the far edge of the square, towering over the crowd, silver eyes locked on her as if the years had never passed. His aura rolled through the air like a storm, scattering whispers and stares in his wake. Her basket nearly slipped from her hands. No, not here, not now, but denial couldn't erase the truth. He had found her, the crowd thinned between them, yet his gaze never faltered. Relief and fury warred across his face, his chest rising like a man who had been drowning and finally seen shore, only to discover it was jagged rock. Her breath hitched, she turned, bolting into the maze of alleys. "Stop!" his voice thundered after her, carrying the command of an alpha that made even humans freeze mid. "Step." But she ran harder, her cloak snapping like wings behind her. Cobblestones blurred underfoot as she darted between stalls and shadowed doorways, heart slamming in her throat. She could hear him behind her, the crash of boots, the growl that vibrated with something more primal than rage. "Why," he roared, his voice close now, broken. "Why would you make me believe you were dead?" Tears burned her eyes. She couldn't answer, not without shattering. At the edge of the square, she stumbled into a narrow street lined with abandoned cottages. Silence fell, until his shadow spilled across hers. He was there, blocking her escape, chest heaving, eyes blazing with fire and torment. For a long moment neither spoke, the bond thrumming between them, wild and merciless. Then his voice cracked, low and ragged. "I burned for you, I mourned you, and all this time, you were breathing." Her lips trembled. She forced the words out, each one sharp as glass. "You rejected me. You killed me long before I ever pretended to die." His jaw clenched, anguish flickering across his features. He stepped closer, and she stumbled back, but the wall pressed cold against her spine. You think you can run from fate. His hand slammed against the wall beside her head, caging her in. I won't let you vanish again, not when I've bled for you. Her pulse betrayed her lies, hammering with traitorous longing. But her voice was steel when she whispered, Then you'll have to kill me a second time. Her back was pinned against the cold stone wall, his presence consuming the narrow alley like a cage made of shadow and fire. She tried to steady her breath, to mask the way her pulse raced like prey before the hunt, but his nearness shattered every wall she had built. The air between them crackled, alive with the bond she had sworn to bury. You're alive, he whispered, as if the words themselves were fragile, liable to vanish if spoken too loudly. His silver eyes devoured her face, memorizing every scar, every tremor of her lips. I thought I'd lost you forever. Her throat closed, heat rising unbidden to her cheeks. She forced herself to turn her gaze cold, her voice sharper than the blade she kept hidden beneath her cloak. You don't know me. A bitter laugh broke from him, low and dangerous. Don't lie. Your body betrays you. His hand hovered inches from her cheek, trembling as though fighting a war with itself. Your scent, your heartbeat, it's you. Her wolf whimpered inside her chest, clawing to be acknowledged, to press closer to him. She clenched her fists until her nails dug crescents into her palms. You rejected me. She spat. You ended this bond. Whatever you think you feel, it's gone. But the lie cracked under the weight of his next move. He caught her wrist in a swift, unrelenting grip and pressed her palm against his chest. His heart thundered beneath her touch, wild, furious, alive. Does this feel gone to you? His voice was raw, ragged, almost broken. Tell me, and I'll release you. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The bond roared between them, louder than her denial, louder than her fear. Her hand trembled against him, traitorous heat curling up her arm. For one unbearable moment, she allowed herself to feel it, the warmth, the bond's electric pull, the way her soul surged toward him like a starving flame. Then she tore her hand free, stepping sideways into the shadows. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut like steel. You'll lose me again, this time forever. And before he could stop her, she vanished into the dark, leaving him standing alone, chest heaving, eyes wild with a vow that shook the air itself. I'll never let you go again. The forest swallowed her whole, branches clawing at her cloak as she fled deeper into the shadows. She ran until her lungs burned, until the sound of his pursuit faded into silence. Only then did she slow, clutching her chest as if she could smother the bond with sheer willpower. But the bond wasn't quiet anymore. It pulsed through her veins, hotter, fiercer, as if her wolf had scented freedom after years in chains. Stop, she begged silently. I don't want this. I can't want him. A howl split the night, not his. Her blood froze. The trees shivered as a pack of rogues slipped from the darkness, yellow eyes gleaming, teeth bared in hunger. They circled, low growls vibrating through the earth. She stumbled back, hand fumbling for the blade strapped to her thigh. Easy now. The largest sneered, shifting into half form, his voice guttural. A stray wolf in human clothes. The alpha will pay handsomely to have you delivered. Her heart thudded. They knew who she was. The first rogue lunged. She slashed, steel kissing flesh, but there were too many. Claws tore across her shoulder, heat and pain flooding her senses. She staggered. Then a roar shattered the night. His roar. The alpha burst into the clearing, fury incarnate, his wolf spilling through his skin with silver fire in his eyes. He tore through the first rogue, snapping bone and scattering blood. The others shrank back, snarling, but fear already poisoned their bravado. She sank to her knees, clutching her wound, torn between rage and relief. Mine. His voice boomed like a vow carved into stone as he stood over her, chest heaving, blood dripping from his claws. Touch her again, and I'll rip the stars from the sky to bury you. The rogues fled into the dark, their howls fading. Silence fell, broken only by her ragged breaths. He dropped to his knees before her, hands trembling as they hovered over her wound. His gaze locked on hers, filled with fury, but beneath it, anguish. I told you I wouldn't lose you again. Her vision swam, the bond surged molten and undeniable, wrapping around her like chains she couldn't escape. His scent, cedar, smoke, and storm, filled her lungs. You should have let them take me, she whispered, though her hand betrayed her by gripping his wrist. Never, he growled, the word breaking with something softer. His forehead brushed hers, only for a heartbeat, only for a breath. But it was enough. The bond awakened fully, roaring to life inside her, leaving her trembling in terror, not of him, but of how much she still belonged to him. The forest lay quiet after the storm of claws and blood, yet her heart still thundered as if the rogues had never fled. His arms cradled her, strong and trembling, as he pressed torn fabric against her wound. Stay still, he muttered, though his voice shook. You're losing too much blood. She wanted to push him away, to remind herself that he was the reason she'd died once before. But his touch burned into her skin, pulling her back into a place she'd sworn to bury. Moonlight spilled through the branches, silvering his features. For the first time, she saw not just the alpha, the man who had cut her with words sharper than any blade, but the shadow of guilt that had never left his eyes. Why, she rasped. Her lips trembled, the question torn from a place she had tried to seal shut. Why did you reject me? You could have killed me that night, but instead you, her voice broke. You destroyed me another way. He froze, hands still pressed against her bleeding shoulder. His jaw flexed like the truth was a beast he'd locked inside for years. Finally, his words spilled low and rough, a curse on the pack on me. The seer said if I claimed you, everyone I loved would burn, I thought. If I cut you out, if I made you hate me, it would keep you safe. Her breath hitched. For years, she had carried the echo of his rejection, believing she was unworthy, unwanted. Now, the truth carved a deeper wound, because it meant he had wanted her always, but chose pain over love. You think that makes it better, she whispered bitterly, tears glinting. You left me to ashes, you let me die. His thumb brushed her cheek, hesitant, as though he had no right. I've died every day since. His voice cracked, raw with confession. I search for your ghost because I don't know how to breathe without you. The bond pulsed between them, hungry, merciless. Her wolf stirred, howling inside, clawing at the walls she had built. But she couldn't surrender, not yet. She tilted her face away, swallowing the sob rising in her chest. You don't know everything, she whispered, the words trembling like leaves in the wind. I didn't just survive that night. I had help, and if the pack knew, they would call it betrayal. His gaze sharpened. Tell me, her silence was answer enough. Secrets coiled in her veins, too dangerous to release. If he knew who had saved her, who had hidden her all these years, the fragile life she built would shatter. But the truth had slipped through the cracks already, and his wolf sensed it. His eyes glowed fierce and unyielding. I don't care what you've done or who you've trusted. You're mine, the moon gave you to me, and I'll tear apart anyone who tries to keep you. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the aching, treacherous hope she swore she didn't want. The moon watched in silence as two broken souls sat in the shadows, bound by secrets, torn between fate and choice. And somewhere beyond the trees, unseen eyes glinted in the dark, watching, listening, waiting to strike. The dawn bled pale over the treetops, painting the pack's stronghold in cold silver light. She had thought she'd never see it again, the sprawling lodge, the banners fluttering with the crescent moon crest, the murmurs of wolves waking to their duties. Every step closer felt like walking into the jaws of the beast she had escaped. Beside her, the alpha's stride was taut, his jaw locked. He kept her close, protective, as though he already sensed what would happen when the pack laid eyes on her. The whispers began the moment they crossed the courtyard. Ghost, impossible. Didn't she die? Eyes widened, fear twisting into suspicion. She shrank beneath the weight of their stares, every accusing gaze pressing against her skin like knives. Then came the voice that shattered the uneasy silence. It's her. A tall wolf stepped from the crowd. Kieran, the alpha's most ambitious rival, his smile sharp as broken glass. The traitor who faked her death. She dared deceive us, dared shame the bond of the moon goddess. His words lashed like whips, spreading fury through the crowd. Her breath caught. So this was how it ended. Not with forgiveness, but with fire and blame. That's not true. The alpha growled, stepping forward, his chest a wall between her and the snapping pack. His eyes burned silver, his authority rolling like thunder. "She is under my protection." But Kieran only sneered. "You speak of protection, Alpha, but how long have you known? Did you hide her from us? Did you break our laws for her?" His voice rose, venom lacing every word. "If she lives, she must answer for the betrayal, for lying to her pack, for deserting us." A low murmur rippled through the wolves gathered, doubt, anger, fear. Her heart pounded as she turned her gaze to the Alpha. His pack demanded blood, demanded loyalty. To save her, he would have to defy them all. "Say it," Kieran taunted, eyes glinting. "Choose her, and you choose against your own pack." The Alpha's hands curled into fists. She could feel the war inside him, the duty to his wolves, the bond to his mate, tearing him apart. His voice faltered, rough with conflict. His gaze flicked to her, pain and fire locked in those silver eyes. "I will not let you touch her," gasps echoed. Kieran's smile widened, cruel and triumphant. "Then you've betrayed us too, Alpha." Her stomach twisted, a pit opening beneath her feet. She had wanted the truth to remain hidden. Now it burned in front of every wolf she had once called family. The bond pulsed wildly inside her chest, screaming that everything was about to break. And above the rising chaos, Kieran's voice struck like a blade. "She dies at moonrise." The courtyard was a storm of snarls, claws, and silver eyes. The pack had gathered, tension crackling like lightning before a tempest. She stood trembling, cornered, every instinct screaming to flee. But there was nowhere left to run. Kieran stepped forward, a cruel smile curling his lips. "The Alpha refuses to hand her over, then we will take her by force." His wolf flared half-formed, claws scraping stone. The crowd murmured, fear mixing with excitement. They had waited years for the scandal. The mate they thought dead returned to defy them. And then the Alpha erupted. A roar ripped from his chest, pure fury, raw and unrelenting. His form shifted, silver fur gleaming under the rising sun, muscles coiled like steel springs. He moved faster than thought, a blur of teeth and claws, a storm of unrestrained power. "Step one paw closer," he thundered, "and I'll tear this ground open to bury you alive." The rogues who dared approach her fell back, scattering like leaves before a hurricane. Kieran's smirk faltered as the full force of the Alpha's wrath descended. She sank to her knees, heart racing, both terrified and helplessly drawn to him. The bond screamed through her, molten and binding, pulling her into the fierce orbit of his presence. He dropped to one knee, pressing a hand to her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, wiping away the dirt and tears of betrayal. "Do you hear me?" he growled. "No one touches you. No one. You are mine. The moon gave you to me, and I will fight every star and shadow to keep you alive." Her lips parted, trembling as the bond throbbed between them. Her wolf, wild and unrestrained, howled inside, joining his in a duet of claiming. I don't," she began, voice breaking, but he silenced her with a mere look. "SHH," he whispered, his forehead pressing against hers. No words, only this, only us, and the world contracted. The pack's fury, Kieran's sneer, the whispers. They all fell away beneath the raw, undeniable power of their union. His claws dug into the earth, a warning to anyone daring to challenge him, but he was already fully focused on her. Her pulse raced against his heartbeat, each sinking until they were no longer two but one. Wolf and mate, Alpha and destined partner, bound by fate, fire, and fury. Finally, when the pack's murmurs died into awed silence, he carried her into the shadowed wings of the lodge, arms strong, heart fierce. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that death had not claimed her, rejection could not hold her, and the Alpha, her Alpha, would never let her go again. The forest lay quiet beneath the moon, silver light pooling over the clearing where the Alpha and his mate finally stood alone. The fire from the courtyard battle had burned to embers, leaving smoke curling gently into the night sky. She leaned against him, arms wrapped around his waist, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. After years of running, hiding, and surviving, she was home, not in a place, but in the arms of the man who had never stopped claiming her, even when she believed herself dead. "You're alive," he whispered, his breath warm against her hair. "You really are here." She smiled, the first one in years that wasn't touched with fear or sorrow. I am, and I'm not going anywhere this time. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, slow, deliberate, as if sealing the promise he had made in the midst of blood and chaos. The bond between them pulsed, fierce and unyielding, no longer hidden, no longer denied. The pack watched from the shadows, a silent acknowledgement of the Alpha's choice. Loyalty and obedience had been tested, laws had been broken, but the Alpha's mate was hers to keep, and the bond that had survived fire, deception, and betrayal could not be undone. She lifted her face, meeting his silver eyes, and saw every confession of longing, every apology for rejection, every unspoken vow shimmering there. I thought you hated me, she admitted, voice trembling. I hated losing you, he murmured, every day, but I swore I would find you, keep you, protect you, even if it meant going against everything I knew. Her hands cupped his face, tracing the lines she remembered from years ago, now softened by pain and relief. I'm yours, she whispered, completely, no secrets, no running. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a sound of possessive triumph and tender devotion. Forever, he promised, voice carrying over the forest, over the moonlight, over the wounds that had once threatened to tear them apart. They stood together in silence, the night holding its breath around them. Every shadow, every danger, every heartbreak was gone, or at least rendered powerless against the force that had brought them here. Alive together, unbroken, and for the first time, she believed that fate, no matter how cruel, could be reclaimed by love. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying away whispers of fear and leaving only one truth: she was alive. And in his arms, she had finally found the home she had been running toward her entire life.